5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
You're listening to Tabletop and Beyond with your host, Justin.
But before we get started, how was your Geek Week?
And co-hosts Dan and Jason.
You have to be willing to let the dice help you tell the story.
Okay, look, this year I'm going to stop mispronouncing words. Join us as we cover board games to war games and beyond.
Welcome back to Tabletop and Beyond. This is the winning Warcry segment. Happy to have Jason and Dan with us. Welcome back, boys.
Hey.
How you doing?
Pretty good. So I was listening to a How to Podcast video the other day, and it mentioned that at the beginning of every video, you should announce one interesting thing about yourself. So the thing I'm going to announce right now is that I thoroughly enjoyed the new Weird Al Yankovic movie.
Okay. What was good about it?
It was amazing. Have you ever seen like UHF or like Yeah. So it was very much like in that spirit of like hilariousness. So the best part about this is like if you look at it, it says like biography, like kind of like a Elvis or Elton John or Freddie Mercury biography, except this is of Weird Al Yankovic. None of it is true. Like that's the most amazing thing about it. Like at one point he's dating Madonna, you know, which like in real life they met for like 45 seconds one time, but he has this whole thing where he's dating Madonna and like he's the most amazing music salesman of all time, you know. And
Okay.
like,
It's his perception of his own autobiography.
yeah, it's absolutely
Yeah, that's
like
good.
I try to describe it.
That's pretty good, actually.
It's really fun. It's really funny. And I told my wife, I was like, it's like as if a 5-year-old would describe their life. You know what I mean? Like how like absolutely amazing and wonderful they are. It's so funny.
You know, I always learn something about your coworkers and your friends when you get in their cars and you find Weird Al Yankovic in their playing in their playlist. Like I have this one buddy that I used to went back when I was into weightlifting. I would live with this guy. This guy is like a lumberjack. He's huge. He does like 5-plate stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And again, his car once, and he's got polka music. And Weird Al playing, and I'm like, oh, dude, I just learned something about you. You know, it's
That's awesome.
It's just really funny, you know. Everyone's got different tastes and stuff, but Weird Al Yankovic he's an interesting type of humor.
Yeah, and this one like it was really funny to me. Like if you liked UHF, you're gonna absolutely love this movie. And I
See, that's the thing. I liked UHF when I was like 13.
Have you seen it recently?
No, I haven't.
Maybe we should fix that because it's still amazing.
Is it still okay?
It
All
is.
right.
It is. So, Dan, it sounds like you are not too familiar with Weird Al, but that's okay.
I like the little. I think I've gotten like one Weird Al Yankovic album, but
Yeah.
yeah.
He's an acquired taste,
For sure.
you know. So, yeah. But this movie, though, Daniel Radcliffe was handpicked to play him in there, and he does like such an amazing job. It's so funny.
He looks a lot like him. The
He
resemblance is great.
He does, and it's so over the top. Like this movie's just so over the top, like the entire time, and Daniel Radcliffe, like he works it, like he does a really good job. So check it out if you can.
I love all of these former, like not the child actors, but like the teen superstar actors who become incredibly famous and rich really early on, and then but they're still, because they didn't get famous as kids, it was teens. They, like Robert Pattinson, Kristen Stewart are the same way. They just get really into the craft and they do a bunch of weird stuff because they don't need the money.
Yeah.
And so I've seen Daniel Radcliffe in a few things that were almost unacceptably weird, but he was incredible in them.
Yeah, there was a TBS show called Miracle Makers,
Oh, I've seen the
Miracle
first season
Workers.
of that. There's
Yeah,
a
the
few
first
more
season.
seasons I haven't seen, but yeah.
The first season was phenomenal. The other ones after that kind of fell off quickly, but the first season was really funny, and he was super weird and funny in that too.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but that's not guys. We're not here to talk about Weird Al and Daniel Radcliffe. We're here to talk about Warcry. I know I derailed us from minute one, but you know what? That's okay. We've got a great show for everybody. We're going to be talking about the Rotmire Creed. We've got some fighting experience to lend to our perspective this episode. And we're going to be talking about how to fight monsters. I know Peter, one of our longtime friends and tournament goer, he said some of his feedback of the last episode was great breakdown on monsters. How do we beat them now? So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get there, let's talk about hobby table stuff. Jason, what's on your hobby table, buddy?
I have been painting some proxies that I printed with my 3D resin printer to use as stand-in my Warcry army. And actually, the other night we played a game together, which was fun, which we'll probably talk about because played Rotmire Creed versus a Flesh Eater Courts army that I have that I'm kind of tweaking around with that has a Dread Warden that I have allied in. And in place of the Dread Warden, I used a Nosferatu model on a 25mm base, which I thought was a fun pull-in, and it's something that I printed and painted. So that's what's on my table.
Yeah, it was. It kind of fit with the ghoulish theme of your army.
That's why I liked it. It was Loot Studios. Their October, which was kind of their Halloween, scary, spooky batch that they did. They had a bunch of werewolves and vampires in it, and Nosferatu was a named character they had in there. So I chose to use that as my Dread Warden.
Yeah, that's very good. Very good. Dan, how's your hobby table looking?
I have been assembling Lumineth, and I just finished painting a little Nurgle warband, but I
Oh,
haven't
cool.
based them yet. So I've been procrastinate. Basing is my least favorite part of the hobby. I don't know if I've told you guys, but I've been procrastinating basing by doing my second least favorite part of the hobby, which is building.
Mm.
Um, if if I could have just other people do all my building and basing for me, and I only need to paint, that would be just such a wonderful place to live.
So let me ask you: do you paint off of base and then do base and then glue them on, or are you glue to the base and then put basing stuff on kind of
I've I've tried it a few different ways. I don't like any of them.
guy?
So my problem with okay, so you can make the base and then glue them on, but I
Mhm.
prefer painting them with their bases.
Mhm.
And also it requires there's a few different ways to do it, right? One is you can sculpt the base, then glue them on, and then paint it all later. But that
Mhm.
requires you to know what your basing scheme is going to be before you've even put paint to model, which just
Right.
terrible for me. And then, the other way is to just glue them to the base and then base them all once it's already glued. Uh, that's not great because then sometimes I wish some of them had some elevation that they don't have, or some of them I wish
Right.
didn't have cork under them that they do have, or, you know, all of that. And then, yeah, I don't know. The only thing I haven't done yet is I haven't explored a ton of like 3D printed bases. They're just so expensive. It's no fun for me to get a base that's as expensive as the model that's on it. So, a buddy of mine, you've met him, JJ, is going to be looking into 3D printing base toppers.
Okay.
So hopefully it's like not as expensive because you're not printing the whole base. Um, so we'll see if that makes it more fun. But yeah, for
So
now I'm not loving them.
it's
Not
interesting
loving
you say
basing.
that. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. It's interesting you say that because I've been working on my orcs, the 40K orcs still. They got a lot of details, so it's kind of slowing me down a little bit. But I've been working on them. I found some 3D print bases that I wanted to get for them. It was like some junkyard bases. Um,
Hmm.
and with the printer, I mean, like the cost of that was only $3 for the whole, like for all of the the STL files, and then I printed them out, and I think like so I don't know, maybe like the whole thing came out to like $5
Yeah, I
all
mean, once
for all the bases,
once
you
you
know?
have your own printer, certainly
Yeah.
that makes it a lot cheaper. But then you have to look at, I just spent $600 on this printer
Yes, that's true.
for
Yeah.
50 bases. Uh, so yeah, you
Yeah,
got to get your money's worth out of the printer.
I did that math a lot when I was doing the FDM printers and like printing out terrain scenery.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, oh, this little terrain scenery is really like $30.
Uh,
Because like
yep.
you're like adding the cost of the machine and the filament and all that stuff. But I was lucky and I ended up getting a used resin printer for like $60.
Oh wow,
So
that's great.
yeah, so that was good.
I like to batch make bases and then I cast them so that I can reuse them over and over again. Because
Oh, that's a great idea.
once you cast them, then each base is like pennies of resin to repour, and all you really need is like bases, three base styles for an army, and then you can cast them, and all you gotta do is just kind of twist them a little bit every time you put a model on it to give it a little bit of a different look, and then you get a nice diversified base. But to your point, you're not paying $200 to $500 for a printer, but I mean a casting kit probably costs you anywhere, unless you bulk buy and you do this a lot. A small casting kit's going to cost you probably about $30. So you're paying $30 to kind of make the molds, but then those molds are good for years and years.
Okay.
So I like it. I've got a few molds that I kind of pull for. I've got some sci-fi ones and I got some fantasy ones, and I just reuse them. And what's great about them is my fantasy ones, I can repaint. I can change the paint scheme on them, and on one hand they'll look like a desert landscape. On the other hand, they'll look like a grassy knoll, just based on the way you paint them and,
Oh
and a
yeah,
little bit of
that
flock
makes sense.
afterwards. So it's pretty useful. But lots of different ways to try to tackle that part of the hobby.
Yeah, and we have a mutual friend, Caleb Walters, who like is a pretty well-known Age of Sigmar player. He's actually headed this weekend down to the Warhammer Open in New Mexico because he won some tournaments. So he ended up winning the overall Nova Open. But I bring him up because I think he's the one, Jason, that turned you on to doing some of
Yep.
these poured resin basins and molds, because like if you think about Age of Sigmar doing like hundreds of bases, you can get these really detailed bases. Like you end up sculpting and crafting 3 different kinds of bases, but if you pour them over and over again, you can get those really detailed bases for, again, like you said, pennies on the dollar, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's the guy that showed me how to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
So
not gonna lie, this sounds really effective. It doesn't sound fun. Uh,
Yeah, you have
so
to.
you've solved some other problems, but not my main one.
Yeah, you have to enjoy the hobby of the craft that part of the hobby to do it. But if you don't enjoy it, this isn't going to help you enjoy it anymore. It just might make it easier once you get set up to just kind of bang that part out.
just
Yeah.
go get some, astral granite basing material and throw a couple rocks on there and dry brush the crap out of it.
The other
I
thing
know
is
how to do it. It's not that I can't base models. I just hate it.
you just hate it. Yeah,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
fair enough.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you. Like, there's something to be said about finishing a paint job, and then being like, I'm done. I got to do the basing.
Yeah, that's
You know.
exactly what happened to me.
Well, it's funny too because if you talk to board gamers, and they're like, "Yeah, paint my miniature," and then you're like, "Okay, I just need to base it," and they're like, "No, no, 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 no. What are you doing? Why would you put stuff there? It's just that space." Like board gamers don't want you to put anything on their base. They just want a straight black thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny because war gamers are all about giving it that theme. So, yeah, we're a special breed. Special breed.
All kinds.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, like I told you guys before, I'm working on my orcs, and I've been getting pulled off into many different things. So what became Orktober, what was Orktober, has become Morkvember. and we might even be getting into Gork December. So, yeah, good times. Good times with the orcs and Mork and Gork. So,
Jorkuary and
yeah, exactly.
just keep going.
Yeah, no, I've got like six. I think about six of the 12 orcs done. So, and a bunch of like stuff done on the other one. So I'm hoping to finish it soon. Hopefully. Anyway.
Cool.
But it's good. Yeah. All right. So good times with the hobby stuff. Let's talk news. We got some good news coming up. We'll start with the close, interesting thing that's coming up on Friday. And I confirmed this with our local gaming store. They are getting White Dwarf issue 482, or is it 492? 492, I think, in. And this White Dwarf will have Warcry rules for the new Underworlds box, which is the what are their factions? I can't remember. Gnarltooth.
It's Soulblight Gravelords and a more bestial themed, but still slaves to darkness.
Yes.
Like the Gnarl Spirit pack, I think is what they're
Gnarl
called.
Spirit pack. Yep, exactly. So the models look amazing in this. As I think, I mean, I hate to admit it, but the Underworld's models are hands down GW's best models in all of their collection, in my opinion. Like better than the 40k Kill Team ones, better than the Warcry ones, but man, they've got some really good stuff.
Better than Blood Bowl? I mean, I don't know.
Better than Blood Bowl.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so you've got some good stuff coming out with that. So it'll be interesting. Do you think, Dan, that these rules are going to be compatible with matched play or just open and narrative?
Yeah, so they I don't know if you saw, but they actually showed they've given the White Dwarf to a few of their YouTubers that they give early stuff to,
Oh, okay.
and
Okay.
that thing has released, or some of them have released it, and so we've actually seen kind of the rules, and they are going to be cleared for matched play.
Okay.
At least these two bands are.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's pretty cool. That shows that, I'd say people can rest pretty assured that at least all of the sort of recent Underworld stuff is going to get back into Warcry 2.0. It's worded a little ambiguously, so you could maybe say that your current Underworld stuff is in 2.0, but I don't really think that's true. But it's still, it's still really cool.
Yeah.
And we've seen, the stats for all of them, which is really awesome to see. Of course, the Soulblight Gravelords ones are some of the best fighters in the entire game, as befits
Oh my
any
gosh.
Soulblight Gravelords fighter. And the Slaves to Darkness ones are neat.
Neat. Is that a Midwestern term for like not good?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, that boy is just so neat.
Yeah. Actually, I don't have their abilities in front of me. I think one of their abilities is really good, but I don't actually have it in front of me.
Now, do they work as a separate warband or just like fighters within the faction?
They work just as they used to, which is really
Okay.
cool. So fighters within the faction, you can, ally the hero in to other factions just the way you could before.
Yep.
Yeah, so all of the Underworld shenanigans that you kind of know and love and only got to play with for like 4 months, all
I
of them are
know.
back. Yeah, so that's
It's
pretty
really
cool.
interesting because they did that, and we know that Toma Champions that came out that brought the Bladeborn fighters in, we know that was significantly delayed, right? Like it should have probably been out almost a year earlier. At least around December of 2021, like because that was generally the release schedule that they had for the Toma Champions, right? So shortly after that book came out, like we all started noticing, what do you mean this is your last chance to get a lot of those Underworlds models?
Right.
Right? Like they sent out that email being like, "Hey, here's all your favorites. Like this is your last chance to get them." And everybody's kind of looking around like, "But you just literally let us start playing with them in Warcry." And sure enough, they kind of took the toys away. And then they came out with the new 2.0, and they really took the toys away. So I wonder, like, was this kind of a planned thing? Like, was it just the left hand not talking to the right hand, or that was always planned that way? It's just the release sort of made it feel a little bit more poignant, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, it might have just been, hey, they had an overwhelming amount of work in terms of this new edition to get out and not that many people on the Warcry team to do it.
hmm
So, yeah, who knows? But really good to see that they're adding them back in.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you said, if at least if and for anything, just the new models that are coming out, and hopefully we get some, a release maybe in the next Tome of Champions that just kind of lets us bring back some of those Bladeborn fighters because I know the community would really like that. I
Yeah.
see a question being asked all the time on Facebook about it. Can I play with
Yeah.
my warband? And I give them the standard, tournament organizer response, which is in narrative and open play, absolutely play to your heart's content. Use the old values from the old tome, like go like knock yourself out. In a tournament, you're not gonna be able to play them, So, but yeah, to each their own. Right on. All right. So the other bit of news, and this is something I'm going to have a little bit of a gripe session here. It seems like every time we come out with a show, within a week, GW has like an amazing news release for us, and we have to wait like 3 weeks before we cover it here. So I think that happened. That happened with both box releases of Warcry 2.0.
Yep.
It happened. It happened with the reactions preview that we got. Right, like it seems to happen with everything. So just wait. I think in probably a week we're gonna know when to buy this new box that's coming out.
Yeah,
They're-
absolutely, right? I mean, the timing fits perfectly, doesn't it? They released it 3 weeks ago. They haven't given, or they released all the pictures three
yes.
weeks ago. They haven't given us any other information other than that since.
Right.
It'd be pretty surprising if they literally went an entire month. I mean, it just seems like terrible marketing in general, right? They're just letting all of the hype die away, because people were so excited about these models.
So we're obviously talking about Warcry Sundered Fate box set that's coming out that has the new Chameleon Skink Warband and the Jade Obelisk Warband. And like you said, the hype around these models was very high, especially the Jade Obelisk. I haven't seen praise for a Warband's models like that in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you were saying Underworlds are the best models bar none in the game, I was thinking about Jade Obelisk and being like, are you sure about that? I mean, those
Yeah,
and Corvus Cabal stand up, I think, next to anything that they've done for Underworlds. Um,
yeah,
yeah, these Jade friends are pretty sweet.
yeah. They've got some really cool masks and like a lot of really the paint job on them is really good too, right? Like the Jade that's kind of like going with the burgundy cloaks that they have is really nice. But I love the masks on them. It just gives them such a like menacing personality, especially the lady that's like holding the heart above her head, like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
That gives you some real sweet Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom vibes. So it's very good. Now it comes with a couple pieces of terrain, and I think that you have to look at this box like the Kill Team boxes, where like the big box that came out was Octarius, right? And then after that, you had like Chalneth and some of the other ones where the amount of terrain you got in those were not nearly as big. You didn't get a core rule book. You didn't get dice. You didn't get measurement tools. You just basically got the models, the basically what I would consider like a half a box worth of terrain, and then the campaign book that goes with those two models or those two factions, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense for what we'll get. And that would put it at a little bit cheaper price point than the
Hmm.
intro box was for Warcry, which might appeal to some people.
Yeah, the intro box was coming in at about what 225 retail is what I think it was.
Yeah, that sounds
220,
about right.
something like that. It
Yeah,
was low 200s. I ended up picking up mine off of Amazon for 195. But I think this one will probably come in at about 150, in my
that'd be
opinion.
great. I think people would be really excited if that was the price of this box. That would be really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I just don't think that you're. I mean, you're getting probably a little bit of scatter terrain that comes with, three bigger pieces and maybe a couple bamboo ladders. Like I said, it's probably going to be half as much as what you got in the Heart of Gur, and so I don't know. I think about 150 maybe.
Yeah, because Hardagur came with only four pieces of big terrain, but an overwhelming amount of scatter terrain, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we had my whole box of Heart of Gur on the table, and it felt like a good amount of terrain, don't you think, Jason?
Hmm. Yeah.
Like it was perfect for one table. Whereas if you compare it to like the core box that came out, the very first core box, like that was a table and a half worth of
Yeah.
terrain in that box. So, yeah, but I think this one will feel more like a bit sparse for one table. It'll feel like maybe three-quarters of a table worth of terrain.
It looks
Um,
like it. It looks like I'll want to put maybe one of my Sylvaneth trees on there or something.
yeah, something else just to kind of give it a little extra.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the models look amazing. What do you think of the Seraphon models?
I like them a lot. I don't love them the way I love you know, my Jade friends, but
Mm-hmm.
I think they're really cool, and I love that the Underworld's skink, chameleon skink they did was just a chameleon that somehow
Yeah.
was holding a blowpipe, and these are chameleon people,
Right.
right? They're more, they look like sentient beings. And also, if you look at their shields, so Seraphon always had this turtle shell pattern on their shields, but none of their shields actually looked like they came off of turtles, right? They
Oh,
just looked
interesting.
like just some patterning, some scale patterning or
Yeah.
something, but just kind of a shield that maybe they'd stitched together. These look like actual turtle shells. They're patterned the way a turtle shell is patterned, and I think that is really cool.
I want to know the lore behind that. Like, these are clearly reptiles cannibalizing reptiles for their shields.
That's fair.
You know?
Yeah, but maybe they look at like any humans wearing fur and they're like, why are these mammals killing other mammals?
I mean, maybe. But I want to know: is this like a goofy Pluto situation where like one dog is sentient and the other dog is not?
Oh, funny.
So
Yeah, I mean that's always been the question with Seraphon, right?
yeah, yeah. So and like you've got lizards riding dinosaurs, and like which one's the sentient one?
Yeah.
So. But I like the skink ones too. They've got like kind of a cool Aztec feel going on, which has I mean, that's sort of always been sort of their um, like mystique with like the ziggurats, and like the pyramid style type of thing. But definitely when you've got like the who looks to be the leader with the skull helmet
Yep.
and things coming down and the spears, like it definitely has like an Aztec Mayan type feel.
And
And
to get real Mesoamerican archaeology nerd on you, it's cool because um, you know, like you said, there's this maybe Aztec feel, and then jade masks are an Olmec thing, which is
oh,
a
cool.
like a different Mesoamerican, ancient civilization. So
Yeah.
it's kind of got the whole, all very sort of Central American vibes going on in the box. And I
Oh,
think
that's
that
very cool.
the Tzeentch woman the sorceress with the heart, I think, is
Hmm.
meant to evoke Mayan sacrifice as well.
Right.
Um, these guys are really cool because it's sort of they're mixing these kind of Mesoamerican tropes with like these hoods and hammers are very what are those like warrior monk traditions from Europe where you're like not
Oh
allowed to
yeah.
spill blood, but you go around chopping people in your armor and your hood. Um, that's a kind of a mix of these European and Mesoamerican traditions, which I think makes them really cool, where they look like they're a whole realized culture without being kind of derivative of anything.
Yeah, I mean the cut and style of their cloaks definitely feels like Mesoamerican, you know. So I
What do you
like
think
it.
about the birds, the terror wings?
The Seraphon birds,
Yeah,
I like them, but I'm not sure what's going on. Like, are the scales around their head, is that like a little helmet that they're wearing, or is that's just what their scales are doing, and they maybe it's just the paint job. The contrast is a little bit much for me, maybe.
Uh,
I think it's supposed to denote that the skinks have trained them and broken them. Because
Oh.
they at least the text says flocks of trained terror wings. So
Oh,
they've been
like
like
a hawk
domesticized or
mask.
yeah, kind of like a hawk
Yeah,
mask. That's
okay.
how I looked at it.
That makes sense. Okay. It works for me now.
yeah,
Yeah.
because if you look at the top one that's got kind of like standing on top of the thing, the front part of his mask there looks like it's not attached to the beak.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
looks like
Hmm.
it's kind of
Yeah.
like a meant to be a mask type thing.
Yeah, and
Okay.
So
they kind of have pet collars on them too.
Yeah,
Each of
they
them.
do. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
That makes
curious on how
sense.
they're gonna play. Like, are they gonna be? Obviously, they're gonna fly, right?
Right.
But what's their movement gonna be like?
10 inches
How will they augment? You think they're 10, or do we know?
Or
easily,
12. I think they'll
10
be
or 12.
12.
Yeah,
And then how will that augment from a point value then? Because we know movement's a huge point scaler in this
there'll be
game.
225 points with one
Yeah.
attack, or 1 inch range, two attack,
Right.
two one 3 damage,
Yeah.
212 points.
Right.
Oh, savage.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. But in 1.0 they would have been 45 points and they would have broken the game. So,
Yeah, seriously.
maybe in third edition they'll find a happy medium.
What was the flight of the in first edition the chaos birds that were not part of a faction but the what are they called?
The
Oh.
harpy or Furies, the
Yeah,
Furies.
the Furies. What was their
They had
flight
an
movement?
8-inch move
Yeah,
in
I
WoW.
could see these guys having an 8-inch move. It seemed like the model's not big enough to have a 10 or a 12, in my opinion.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe,
But maybe.
maybe.
Well, that would make them better because all these 10-inch and 12-inch move fighters really pay for it.
They do, man. Those
Hmm.
extra inches really make them pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
mean, you know, I could go on and on about the linear pointing algorithm and how I don't think that each individual point of a given stat is the same value as the previous one, but you pay the same for it. I
yeah.
just hate that, but it's fine.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other night, how it seems to be the order of pointing priority is movement, toughness, wounds characteristic, after that like maybe damage or attacks or something like that. So, but it seems like movement and toughness are like the main determinators of like how much points you're gonna get.
Interesting. Luckily, I mean, the toughness tax isn't nearly as bad as it used to be.
That's very
There's
true.
lots of toughness 5 and 6 guys now who are pretty interesting.
That's very true. I think in 1.0 toughness was the main stat
Mm,
of pointing, and then they decided movement was king.
yeah.
So anyway, Well, like we said, we don't know when this box is supposed to come out. I'm surprised we haven't heard about it. But then again, if you look at Warhammer community, it's been all about the Imperial Guard and Cadia and all that stuff, which is kind of their big push right now. So I see that campaign wrapping up. So we joke about this, but when is Warhammer Fest coming out? It's like in a couple of days, isn't it?
It is. They didn't have the Warcry logo on any of the preview stuff,
Oh,
so
okay.
we won't see any new Warcry models, but they might at least announce, the models we've already seen and when they come out. Who knows?
Yeah, I could see a pre-order coming out with some of the announcements that they do, and it has this box in it.
Hey, let me
Yeah.
ask you before we get off this real quick. The Jade Obelisk guys, do you think that they're gonna be like elite style, like Stormcast? I mean, and I ask that from a theme perspective. Like these guys are loaded with stone. They're turning into stone.
Mm.
Like they've got to have like a crazy low movement to hit
Like
floor on that.
movement 3,
Yeah, like
but toughness 5 across the board.
Yeah, something
almost.
like. I mean, they've got to have a high toughness because I mean they're just stone on the outside and they're turning into stone, but they've got to be like super slow. Like I'm guessing these guys are gonna be like they're gonna be toughness 5, 4s and 5s, and they're gonna be moves 3s and 4s depending on them.
That tracks to me. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that too.
it'd be
Uh,
curious to see what their hit profiles are gonna be
I
like.
bet that you're gonna see 2s and 4s across the board with some 3s and 5s.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
And I
But
think
there's
that's
some
cool
range
because
guys.
it's so different from Zinj right now.
Yeah.
Zinj at the moment doesn't have anybody like that. I mean, they might have a toughness 5 character somewhere, but in general, they really don't. Um,
Yeah.
so that's cool. They don't have, maybe the Ogroid Thaumaturge counts as like an in-your-face melee bruiser, but um, they've got a lot of like, you know, their Zangors, or we have tons of wounds, but we don't, and we're pretty fast. We're like the little mobile tar pits of the Zangors, but um, most of their stuff is like kind of tricksy shooters and weird stuff, especially in the demon side. So this could
Yeah.
be a really different playstyle.
Yeah, cool. Be interesting.
Yeah, it looks like they've got quite a few ranged models though. I'm counting 1, 2, 3 different ranged models in what they previewed for us.
That'll
Yeah.
be important if they're really slow.
Yep.
Another
Uh,
interesting. Go ahead.
2.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was counting 2. I counted 1 twice.
Another interesting piece of terrain here is you'll notice one of what looks like maybe their second largest or maybe their largest piece of terrain that comes in this box. The terrain is built such that it has a blocking vertical wall on a lifted platform,
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
which we don't really have in the core GUR set right now. There's no really vertical block in any of the terrain.
Mm-hmm.
And I've watched a couple YouTube videos about, how to set up a good terrain for a good battle. And when you have pieces like that, you need to set them up appropriately so they don't just become wall guards that stop action because people hide behind them, especially with shooting and ranged. So be curious
Yeah.
to see, how people set that up in such a way that it instill, it doesn't become a place to cower behind, but at the same time it still provides some benefit to it in terms of
I
cover.
hope it's only a place to cower behind. I'm going to model mine. I'm going to take the other one and remove all of the bamboo slats and just put them around in a little house.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Just like that vertebrae house, I'm
Yeah.
going to put
Yeah.
I'm going to put my entire warband in the little vertebrae house so no one
Yeah.
can shoot me.
I mean, okay, so that vertebrae house, like, could you actually put a model in there?
Not many of them, right? But some, I mean, they've got some pictures. They've got
Do-
some pictures.
Do you think the rules would allow you to put a model inside
There might be a rule for that piece.
Oh wow, this vertebrae house is huge. When it's shown, they have some pictures of showing it next to models, and if you didn't have the base, you could absolutely fit a model in there.
Yeah.
Um,
You could fit any dwarf in there.
you could fit any dwarf in there. Agreed. 100% agree. You could fit any dwarf in there.
I
Um,
wonder if
and a
there's
lot of
gonna-
goblins too.
Yeah, I wonder if there'll be a special rule for that piece, for that train piece
Yeah,
inside
I
there.
don't know.
Target
It's kind
Grot
of funny.
becomes indestructible.
Or maybe there's some like deadly thing inside there, and every round you stay in there, it's like consider you have to do like a deadly terrain roll or something.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That'd be interesting. Very interesting.
All right, cool.
Well, I'm excited. Dan, are you thinking of getting this box?
I'm 100% getting this one.
You
I knew
didn't
when
get
I
the Heart of Gur one, did you?
right, I didn't.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to tell people like skip the ones you don't love so that you can grab the ones you do.
Yeah.
Because there's no one's gonna be able well, not no one. Some people can do this, but most people you're not gonna want to get all four, right? Because it's gonna be really expensive. It's gonna take ages to paint them.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten to where like I struggle to paint more than like 3 warbands a year. So,
Yeah.
you don't want to get a ton of these. So yeah, I'm just gonna get this one, and then the next one is called the Blood Hunt, which I could see maybe it could have some corn models I would like, but it's probably just gonna be vampires, and I'm not that into vampires, so I think this one's probably the one for me.
Man, with all the stuff that they have released for vampires, like release more vampires, guys, like I right now I'm just envisioning like dudes at Games Workshop sitting around watching Twilight all day. Like they've just got such a love affair with vampires right now.
Vampires and skeletons. Oh yeah, because they did all this Cursed City stuff. I
Yeah.
wonder if what we're actually gonna get. No, this is too conspiracy-ish. But if it was just like a bunch of Cursed City stuff that they never got to put in Cursed City, so now they're putting it in a
Oh my
Warcry
gosh.
box, that'd be so
That would
funny.
be hilarious. That would be hilarious. That whole Cursed City thing, I don't think we talked about it on here, but what a nightmare that Cursed City rollout was from the get-go.
Yeah, an
From the
all-timer.
get-go. And they tried to pass off these last two quote-unquote expansions. It was like a couple of cards and like a couple of extra missions for like $50 each. And the first expansion, like nobody could buy. It was sold out. Like it wasn't even available to buy. Like the few people who wanted to do it couldn't even buy it. It was crazy. So that would be hilarious if they had some models that they're planning to release for Curse City, and they're like, Warcry can get them now.
Yeah. Maybe that's why the Legionnaires are their own box. It's like they would have been in a different box, but now they've got an extra warband on their
Oh,
hands
that's too
because it's
funny.
Cursed City stuff.
That's too funny. That's
Yeah.
too funny.
None of this is probably true, people. I'm not like reporting this, anything, just in case anybody listens to the podcast and gets the wrong impression. I don't think this is actually true, but I think we've got like a 10% chance this is true, and it'd be really funny.
Well, in like 3 months, we're gonna know if you were right or wrong, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
somebody hold Nostradamus' feet to the fire here, and keep him honest.
All right.
anyway.
So we've talked about this box. Let's talk about the last box. Let's talk about the last time we got to the Horns of Hashut, and that was pretty
Yeah.
sweet. Let's get into the Rotmire Creed.
Absolutely. So before we really dive into the analysis of Rotmire Creed, Jason and I had a great game that we played on Monday night. Like he said, we played against. He was running Flesh Eater Courts, and I was running basically the base set of Rotmire Creed straight out of the box because I wanted to see how they performed. And Jason, let's talk about the game a little bit, and then we can get into like what we thought about Rotmire Creed. So, why don't you set us up with the game?
We had a fun battle and twist. The mission was one where one treasure starts in the middle of the field. Do you remember what the name of it was?
Not off the top of my
I
head.
don't either. But
unfortunately.
anyways, one treasure starts in the middle of the field, and then every round the player without initiative rolls a dice, and if you are equal to or less than the round number, you place another treasure on the field. And if you get a 6, I think you put like 3 treasures out on the field.
D3.
Yeah, D3 treasures.
And it
out
was
on the
just
field.
less than. It wasn't equal to. It was just
Yeah, okay,
less
less than, yeah.
Yeah.
And so and then the way you win is at the end of the 4th battle round, the player who has the most fighters holding a treasure at the end of that battle round wins.
Yeah.
So it doesn't it doesn't really matter what you're doing round 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's at the end, how many do you have in your possession. So that was kind of cool. And what was fun was the twist we had, which I don't think I'd seen this twist come up before. Of course, I haven't played too many 2.0
Yeah,
twisty
and this
games.
was out of the This was out of the Heart of Gur box too.
Yeah, it was at the we kind of got the order wrong a little bit, but I don't think it really mattered. At the beginning of a round, you pick enemy fighter, so a fighter from your opponent's warband that is greater than 3 inches away from any other model. So basically, if somebody's kind of standing out by himself, you roll a dice, and if he's greater than 6 inches away from anyone, you add 1 to that. If you roll a 6, the fighter is taken down immediately. I think it was called like Creature in the Dark.
Creature in the Dark.
Yeah, which I thought was a really fun twist. It kind of made you either had to be next to an enemy model at the beginning of the round or next to a player model, so you weren't just kind of out on an island by yourself flying around. It was kind of cool, and actually we had one taken down that way.
Yeah, one of my guys, of course, would roll a dice, and it was a 6, and he's like goner.
Yeah, boom. Yeah, it was the end of the round, and he slew one of my models, which left him alone out in the wilderness, and then on the top of the round rolled a 6.
Yeah, too funny. So
normally
kind of
I would
just a
hate
fun
that,
twist.
but it sounds like for that specific treasure mission, it's probably pretty interesting then, because running away with the treasure becomes a bit of a liability.
It does. Yeah.
we actually talk. It's funny you talk about that, Dan, because we said during the game, this is actually a pretty decent twist for any treasure mission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, because like any treasure mission, if you take the treasure and you run off by yourself, or you do the Sylvaneth thing where you blink and you're like on the other side of the board, you got to roll to see if you die.
Yeah. And if you're too far away, it'll be 2 out of 6.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was thinking actually for this might be a little too sadistic, but for a tournament twist for a treasure mission, it's not. I actually think it's kind of cool because it changes strategy.
It does a little bit. I would absolutely be okay with having this show up in a tournament because you can avoid it by just being the way that you play your team, and you keep your enemies near you, or you keep your friends group together.
Right.
You keep your friends close, and sometimes your enemies closer.
Yeah. Wow, that's profound.
I know, right?
I should write that down, post it all over the web. Yeah, but no. So that's what it was, and we had the Gur terrain set up, which was cool with the rope bridges and stuff.
Yep.
I will say that this time Justin, through his own hand, also did lots of spiky big terrain bashing and moving a couple times. Yeah.
Although there was a lot less than when you and Dan were working it.
Yeah. Well, that stuff's really spiky. It's easy to catch it when you're moving your hands around, and because of those bridges, like you catch it in one, it'll tear like 3 terrain pieces over.
Yeah.
But so I had a Flesh Eater Courts army, which was I had a Ghoul King and Horton Ghoul King. I had a Crypt Infernal Courtier, which is like the super duper version of the Crypt Flayer, the flying one with the wings. I had a normal Crypt Horror, 4 ghouls, and a Dread Warden that I had allied in. And the Dread Warden's sole purpose was to do just what he does with his triple, which is to summon people back and forth. So which actually I think it was a game-winning choice.
It was the game winner. Yeah,
in this situation. But then what was your list?
So I was running basically out of the box. So I had a Witherlord, bloated one with Raker Claws. Bloated one with Raker Claw and Hooked Net.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the net too. I had a Carrion Catcher with Snatcher Hook, a Carrion Catcher with Impaler, and I had 3 Mirefolk Outcasts with Biowood Weapons and 4 Mirefolk Outcasts with Biowood Weapon and Shield. Yeah,
you had a significant amount of units on the field for sure.
Yeah, I had quite a few. And it came down to the end. I was carrying 2 treasure. He was carrying 2 treasure. My Witherlord had taken a bit of a beating. And the end of the game, Jason double moved his Dread Warden within range to summon back the Crypt Flayer into combat right next to my Witherlord, and because the Crypt Flayer had not gone that turn, he still had his 2 activations, so he double attacked and
Well, he
killed.
single attacked and then moved. Yeah.
And then moved to pick up the treasure. So, and that was enough to secure the victory, because he was then carrying 3 treasure and I was carrying 1.
It was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, it was a good move. And what was great is that tactic that he used had the slingshot summon. I think we've talked about it on the show before, Dan. But the slingshot summon, I had talked to him about it when we were playing Horns of Hashut, and so he came back with this game and did that exact thing to win the game.
Yeah, you enabled me to win.
I know. You're welcome. You're welcome. I just want my friends to have a good time.
That's right.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So, but this isn't a show about FEC. Let's talk about the Rotmire Creed. So, overall, what do you guys think are some of the strengths of this faction, based on paper or experience or whatever?
Well, I could share some experience. So strengths. Let's talk strengths then. I think that the Witherlord's triple ability is extremely threatening.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of the things I had on my brain every round we were playing is, who is that Witherlord near? Who can he get near in threat range with that triple? Do you have a triple? And how do I handle that? Because, I mean, it's just, maybe explain the triple for us, but it is just so deadly.
So the triple is the lethal injection. You pick a visible enemy fighter within 1 inch of this fighter and roll a number of dice equal to the value of this ability. For each roll that exceeds the toughness characteristic of that fighter, allocate 5 damage points to them. So I think this was really good against your army, for example, because you had 2, or you had kind of 3 if you count the abhorrent ghoul.
Sure.
King, right.
Yeah.
You have 3 beefy pieces on the field that all had toughness 4, right? So I had a triple with him at one point that had a 6. So you're talking, I get to roll 6 dice, exceeding, it's 5 and 6s for you. It's 5 damage. So I had, the mathematical potential to basically do 10 damage. With an ability, which is pretty significant.
Absolutely.
It is. And I think even if there are some models out there that have a toughness 3 that you could still first, if you're doing a strategic move, actually I guess a strategic move, you could use it on a 3 guy if you needed to do something like take a treasure or knock out. It could be situational, but on a 3 it's almost a guaranteed wipe of that model. Because most models that have toughness 3 are going to be under, 12 or under on their wounds probably, and you're going to be hitting, depending on what the number was.
50% of the time,
yeah, exactly. And 50% on 4 dice, that's 10, boom, right there, and that's your ability. So you don't even have to use that ability, right? Move in, do your attack. Get base to base, do your attack. If you need to finish him off, you really need to finish him off. It's almost a guarantee wipe of that model.
And it's also so scary. A lot of these fighters, 20 wound fighters, if you surround them with a few chaff models, they're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
But if you surround a Witherlord with a bunch of chaff models, it just goes boom, lethal injection, and then boom, starts hitting them. And it does a lot of damage to low toughness fighters, because there's a lot of strength 4 among the heavy hitters in this warband, right?
Yep.
The Witherlord is strength 4, the bloated one is strength 4, so they are absolutely blowing up toughness 3 fighters. I would say that's for me, I would say that's one of the big strengths of the warband, is that they just wipe the floor with anything that's toughness 3.
I agree with you on that. Yeah, the only toughness 3 fighters are your chaff models that are the Mire folk, right? Or sorry, strength 3 models are the Mire folk outcasts. So everybody else, all of your other, there's only one hero, which is the Witherlord, but all of your other more elite fighters, they are all strength 4. And
Strength 4 with
almost,
respectable numbers of attacks, and
yes.
they're not just crit fit. It's not like 1/4 profiles or 1/5 profiles. It's like
Hmm.
2 damage on every regular hit. So yeah, they
Yeah.
just destroy toughness 3 fighters so effectively.
Yeah, there's the leader, and then there's 4 kind of elite fighters, right? There's the bloated one with breaker claws, the bloated one with breaker claw hook net, and then the 2 carrion catchers. The carrion catcher with the snatcher hook, he's the only one that doesn't have crit 5. He's base damage 2, crit 4. Everybody else is base damage 2, crit 5, and the Witherlord is 3 and 5. I mean, that's significant damage right there.
Yeah. So I've got to ask you, because me looking at the stats and looking at the abilities, it seems like the carrion catchers are terrible. Is that how it played? It seems like every fighter in this warband is pretty good except for the carrion catchers. They seem awful.
It's funny. It's funny that you say that because we were talking about like, okay, well, I played with the band right out of the box. Now, how do I optimize this band?
Uh-huh.
And what we came to the conclusion of is like the warband that I was playing with was 960 points. So I have 40 points to play with a little bit.
Okay.
The Witherlord is 175, and so the thought was um, maybe drop a carrion catcher and another like Mirefolk guy, and you can add another Witherlord. Um, you know, uh, or drop 2 of the Mirefolk guys, and with the extra 40 points, add another Witherlord as well. The carrion catchers, believe it or not, like they both only have 3 attacks, right?
Yeah.
3 attacks, strength 4, 2/5 damage, or 2/4 if depending on which one you go with. Um, they did really good against chaff. I had one of the carrion catchers took out 2 ghouls in 1 round.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I mean, like, yeah, I mean they got like a couple, and now they each had like 1 or 2 points already on them. So, but he attacked one, killed one, attacked another, killed another. So I don't know. They didn't do terrible, Jason.
I
What do you
think
think?
I think they were fine. I think when we get to the merfolk, we've got some thoughts there, but I think the
Yeah.
carrion catchers are fine. Like we talked about before, the 2-inch range is really critical because it gives you the freedom of movement on your next turn.
Okay.
Not being locked in combat, meaning you don't have to do a disengage, but you can still attack, right? And so that's an important thing with a lot of 1-inch flingers is you have to commit yourself to potentially having to use a disengage if you're going to have to use that model for other than swinging on the next round.
I will say with both of those two, both of them came off of the board edge where they had come on in their battle group, right? And were able to move 4 inches and still reach out and touch one of the ghouls.
Yeah, I mean it's significant, right? I mean you have
Because
a
they had the
6-inch
2
threat.
inch reach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
6-inch threat range is good. So if you look at someone like that and you think, gosh, these guys only move 4, it's like actually they kind of have a 6-inch threat range, which isn't that bad.
Yeah. So,
Especially if they're doing
yeah.
2-5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. What did you think of the Raker Claw guy, Jason?
The Raker, which one's the Raker Claw?
He was a
The
dude with the
bloated
claws.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The guy who got taken down by the creature in the dark.
The creature in the dark took him
The
down.
creature in the dark took
Yeah.
him down, yeah.
Uh,
He did some significant damage too. I mean, he was the you had the one with the net, right? So he
Yes.
was doing 4 attacks versus 5 attacks.
Mm-hmm.
But 4 attack strength, 4-2-5. I mean, that I think you were doing some pretty massive damage. He's the guy that took out the Crypt Infernal, whatever, the super
Flayer.
duper
Yeah, the souped-up
Flayer
Flayer.
guy. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't in 1 round, but and it's one of those. I kind of knew he was going to take him, but I wasn't quite anticipating the amount of damage output that he was going to provide. So it was a significant amount of damage. Now that guy is a 1-inch attack, so you are kind of committing yourself into combat with him. And I think you struggled to find an opportunity to actually use the net.
Yeah.
At least in our game, you did.
I was going to ask you about that because almost every net is either value of the dice or 3 inches, but this net is only 1 inch range, and
Exactly.
it seems a lot tougher to use. So you said you
It
struggled
was
to find spots for it?
well, it was freaking impossible to use because, like, if you think about it, right? Like, I didn't want to get him into combat where I was going to have to take a double attack coming back from that flare,
Yeah,
right?
that makes sense.
Like, so I kept him out until the flare could go, and then I would move him in. Why would I use my net then? Because the net owns, you know what I mean? Because
Right,
like he's
right.
already gone, he's already done his thing. Um, the only, I guess I may have used the net, um, at the beginning of the next round after I had already gone in. Right at the beginning of the next round, if I knew I was gonna die, and I could throw the net on him, and then he couldn't, like, after he killed me, he couldn't move.
Yeah, I
Like,
think the net.
that's the only situation I can see this working.
I think the net is only useful if you do it at the beginning of your activation, or sorry, if you activate before them and you're
Mhm.
planning on disengaging.
Yeah,
Right. But why would you disengage with this guy when he can do so much damage?
Well,
that's a great question.
it's strategic, right? Like maybe you throw a net on the one you're engaged, you disengage, and then you go move. That's true. You'd have
just,
to. You
it
would just
just,
move to engage. Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's
could
just so
see it
It's hard.
in
It's
situational.
hard.
but
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
many of them.
Yeah.
It's hard to contrive something just off the top of your head as to how you would do it. I don't know. My recommendation would be to drop the net one and
Yeah,
go to
I
the one that
agree.
gives an additional attack.
And so
Yeah.
here's the thing, though, is that on a double you can use the net, but he also has on a triple. So in terms of abilities, the best ability on here is that lethal injection that the Witherlord can do. The second best ability is what this guy can do on a triple,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
roll a dice for each visible enemy fighter within 3 inches of this fighter. On a 3 to 4, allocate 1 damage. On a 5 to 6, allocate a number of damage points equal to the value of this ability. Now, normally I don't like those abilities, like where you have to roll a dice and it's only
Yeah.
like on a 5 or 6 that it actually does damage. But the fact that you're rolling for everything around you within 3 inches makes it a lot better.
Yep.
So, much more return bang for your buck on that ability. And
Now
I think you,
that's
yeah,
not just the. You could do that with the non-hook necked one, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, the non-net one. Yep, exactly. So
Yeah, why would you ever?
I know, right? I mean, now technically that's a triple and the net is a
Yeah,
double, but um, if I'm gonna be honest here, like if I have a double and the dude has a net, I'm probably gonna give the double to a blowpipe guy somewhere else.
interesting.
So, and we can talk about the blowpipe
Or to
thing
give
in a
him
minute.
onslaught so that he gets to be like his buddy with the raker claws.
Honestly, like give him onslaught and let him have an extra attack. Like that's
Yeah.
way better. That's way better
Mhm.
than the net. And so,
Mhm.
what's so funny is like nets are actually pretty good abilities. Like like especially as the Gloom Spike gets net one is like really good.
Yeah.
But this one just because you have to get within like 1 inch and yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I could think of some situations where, you're doing the thing where you move into engagement range of multiple models. One of them you throw a net on and you try to kill the other one. So there's some situations I just don't know if it's worth losing that extra dice hit.
Now, and to be fair, like the net ability is not just throwing a net. Like you roll a dice, and here's another thing. I mean, you roll a dice with the Gloom Spike gets one, right? And on a 3-up, like they can't get out. With this one, you roll a dice on the 3-up, they can't get out, right? They've got the net on them, but you also do a number of points of damage equal to that roll. So if it succeeds, you're doing a 3, 4, 5, 6 points of damage on that as well. So there is an opportunity to not just net them, but also damage them as well.
You know what? That actually, I changed my mind. I didn't realize that. That makes that a way lot better.
Yeah,
Way
but
better.
not
That's-
as a
the
net,
grammar's fun, but
which is interesting. It's just
But
as
not
a
as a
burn
net.
spell. It's like you attacked them, left them on one, and you're like, okay, I'll use this double. Maybe it's instead of using onslaught, where you put in an extra dice and you don't know if you're gonna need it or not. Now you just wait. If you manage to kill them, great. You save dice, and if you don't manage to kill them, you throw the net on them and kill them that way. Um, but you're not using it to actually net anything. You're
Yeah.
just using it to finish
Well,
things
and that's
off.
where I think you look at the because it's hooked net, right? Maybe
Yeah.
look at the
Yeah,
net, the actual netting part as just something that may help. It may help, but it's not the main purpose. The main purpose is to do 3, 4, or 5 damage to him
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
on a
Yeah.
double. That's actually pretty good. Now that I think about that,
yeah.
move in with
That's
a
solid.
double,
I
you
mean,
get a fifth.
it's still okay.
You
Yeah.
get
I'd still,
what is it, 66%
60%. Yeah.
chance? 60% chance to do 3, 4, or 5 damage. I mean, that's a move
Yeah.
in, try to hit as hard as you can, and then try to finish it off.
yeah, I'm probably still going with the Raker Claws one to try to preserve my dice and get more damage, but at least here, now that you've explained it this way, I think it's a legitimate debate. Yeah.
Have to think about that a little more.
Yeah, so I would not build a strategy around this net. Is basically what I'm saying.
I hate
Right?
the
Like,
net. I hate the net.
I mean, like
Just drop the net and move on.
I see this as like a quad where it's nice if it goes off and it goes your way, but you shouldn't build a strategy around it because I feel like the net part of it is so situational that you're not going to find yourself in those situations very often. So, that's kind of what I had to say about
Yeah,
that.
roll the extra die.
Yep. Yep.
And use the doubled add-on slot so you roll in 2 extra die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, so I think we did a pretty good. One strength that I would like to point out is that with the exception of the bloated ones with the Raker claws, everything else. And the Mire folk with the Bilewood weapons, which is like the two little hooked axes that they have, the double weapon ones, chafe. Everybody else has range 2 weapons. So that drastically increases the threat range of the entire faction, right? Being able to have that 2-inch reach and a 4-inch move, which 4 inches is about average, right? Like you see a lot of slower ones with 3, you see a couple faster ones with like 5 or maybe even 6 sometimes.
Yeah.
But 4 inches is nothing to sneeze at. I think it's pretty decent. But then you add on that 2-inch reach, almost faction wide, and you're starting to cook with gas a little bit. So, I think that's definitely one of their strengths. But yeah, I think we've talked about most of their strengths. Jason, what do you think some of their weaknesses are?
Well, we can talk about the one that came up a lot, right? I think that their chaff, even with the 2-inch reach configuration of the chaff, which is that's a 75.1, right?
Yeah.
I don't think they're what 1 and 4, 3 attacks, 3 strength. It's too wet noodly for me. Because when I'll take an example. When I use my ghouls, right, which are 55, I think they're 55 pointers. I don't use them to hit anything. Like, you talk about situational as whenever I make a ghoul actually swing. I use ghouls to move and lock other units up so that my opponent loses a move action in order to use a disengage or has to attack me just to get the little guy out of his way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're gonna run your chaff that way to just try to consume activations from your opponent, then the 2-inch doesn't help because you got to get within 1 inch to make that be effective.
Yep.
So it's like that 2-inch is useless to me if I'm going to run my chaff in that strategy.
That's a good point.
And that was kind of my main thing. I was kind of looking at it from a point value cost with that 2-inch. It's kind of at that point it kind of looks like a little bit of an expensive chaff to me, and I might drop the 2-inch one and just go with the 1-inch to save the 10 points.
Yeah. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I like the 4-3-1-3. I like that better than 3-3-1-4 too. Because what you said, you're going in to lock things into combat. I do like attacking things with my chaff, but only, in clouds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just being cheaper is always going to be better in that situation, right? Because you're just putting more people out there, right? The 65.1 does more damage and is cheaper, so I would definitely be more into that one. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I so here's my plug for the 2-inch range, 75 point Firefolk Outcast, right? This is my plug for it. I take both of what you guys say and I totally agree, but I'm playing devil's advocate here a little bit. That toughness 4 with the 10 wounds is it can be significant. So if you wanted to run them in, like, yeah, like you're not using the value of the 2-inch reach on their spear weapon, but you could still put them in and still attack. Yes, you have one less attack, but if your goal is to be a speed bump, I think that they're a better speed bump than the two-handed weapon guy, just for the fact that they have that extra point of toughness.
Maybe. I think that you got to keep in mind there's only 4 rounds, and
Mm-hmm.
the damage profile on this guy is not gonna. There's a good chance that even if it goes toe to toe with another chaff, it's not going to take that chaff down, and he's going to be locked up for more than 1 round.
Yeah, I mean he's missing one attack, right? Comparatively, his
Yeah.
his crit damage is a little bit higher, so he's missing one more attack than the other guy. And I don't know that that is totally enough to discount him as just being a speed bump. Like if he's going toe to toe with the chaff, then that strength 4 or that toughness 4 means more than the extra attack, because that
Oh,
means
I
that
don't know
that
that I agree.
you don't think so?
Interesting. No, because the extra attack, I mean, it just does more damage and costs less points, right? So I think, I mean, I guess it depends on the chaff model you're fighting, but
So let's say he's
man,
going
being
against a
so much
ghoul that
cheaper.
has, let's say he's going against a ghoul that has strength 3 attacks, but he's toughness 4. Like all of a sudden that ghoul's only hitting on 5s and 6s.
Yeah, but you're
You know?
also, I mean, points matter so much, right? I mean, 75 points is just,
Yeah.
I don't want to pay 75 points for something that's not, you know, really killing stuff. I mean, you can get a demon net for that price, right?
Yeah.
Get an extra attack, keep the 4 damage crit, get an extra point of move. I mean, you can. I know you lose the toughness there, but you get a lot for that with other fighters. I'm not. Anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to belabor it because it's not like they're total garbage fighters, right? There's way worse fighters in the game, but um,
Yeah, but I think that they're by far I mean, obviously they're chaff, right? But point for point, I think that they're actually the weakest fighter in here in this list. We kind of talked about on paper the carrion catchers maybe not being that great. It does suck that they only have 3 attacks. That's not great, but they are actually pretty decent against chaff models. So I would send like the Witherlord and the bloated ones after the beefier models, at the carrion catchers after um, after the chaff models, and the rest of your Mire folk, like sending them out in packs against maybe some of the other elite fighters that only have like 10 to 20 points
Yeah, I think
10 to 20 wounds.
you use your merfolk to control your opponent's elites and heroes,
Yeah,
and potentially, as strategies say, to control the field for maybe where monsters can land as well.
yeah. I will say that another another point of weakness of this faction is that the only model that has more than, or that only has 20 wounds is the Witherlord. The Rakers have 18, the Carrion Catchers have 12, and the Mirefolk have 10. They're not very durable because of that. So, like, especially when you're going toe to toe with, like, again, a crypt flare that has like what 28 wounds, Jason, something like that.
Yeah, 28. Yep. And then the Cryptor itself. Oh wait, no, 28 and then 28. Yep.
Yeah.
It's tough. You're not gonna take something out in one round unless you focus more than one guy on it, which means you're sacrificing some other field control in the game for that round.
Yeah, but like these guys can go down. They could go if they take a bad hit. They could go down pretty easily. Like rat ogres and ogre breachers and things like that. Like they are super scary to this faction.
You know what I would almost consider is bringing in a Chaos Spawn Thrall,
Uh huh.
because those have 30 wounds. You could paint it all Nurgly. You wouldn't have you only get 940 points in the box, so you wouldn't have to cut that much to put it in.
Right.
Um, yeah, that could be a nice option for kind
I
of
mean,
a tough to kill little
How much
friend.
is a carrion thrall?
Chaos Spawn Thrall's 170.
So yeah, I mean, you could easily you could drop maybe one of the Mire folk and a carrion catcher and get a chaos, and I think that's worth it though. If you wanted to go that way, or two carrion catchers, or sorry, two Mire folk guys, and you'd have enough to like put instead of two little chafe units, you've got a chaos spawn thrall now.
Yeah. I mean, if we're going towards like how we'd list build with it, me personally, I know you like the carrion catchers. I would cut all the carrion catchers and all of the shielded Mire folk,
Uh-huh.
and I'd put in um, like a bunch of things. I don't know which ally, but like I think you at that point you have room for two allies. I'd want to have two boxes so I could get more of these sweet bloated ones. I think the
Yeah,
bloated ones are with the Raker claws are just so good. But
yeah, they're pretty legit.
um, I'd want to get another bloated one in there. But after that, yeah, I'd be looking for just sort of the wildest allies I could think of.
Yeah, look, I mean, I would go with another Witherlord to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I
Witherlord
was
seems really good.
I look for 175 being able to have 4 attacks, strength 4, 3-5 damage. That's actually a pretty good profile.
Yeah.
For 175, and they would be sharing that triple of the lethal injection. So like they both couldn't do it obviously in one turn unless you had some amazing rolls and you got two triples. But I kind of found myself like, because you have to do it 1 inch away, like the opportunity wasn't there every round for me to do a lethal injection. So if I had two, I could do it more often.
Yeah.
Without sacrificing too much, I think.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
yeah, so I would have two Wither Lords, at least one bloated one, a couple of the Mire Folk with the double weapons, and then I think, like you said, let's look at getting like a Chaos Spawn in there. Even if you had an Ogoroid Myrmidon, maybe as like just like a big baddie out there to kind of have other units focus fire on him, because these guys have pretty good movement, and if you can have an ally that maybe is like a distractor, quote unquote,
Yeah.
like in an Ogoroid, these guys could run around and easily snatch up treasure and hold it and defend themselves against smaller units while the other, players trying to take down that Ogoroid because he's such a big threat on the field,
Yeah.
or something like that. So, yeah. Overall, I think I like this faction. I think that they play, like, in terms of power level, I think that they are pretty on par with the Horns of Hashut, actually. So I'm kind of looking forward to Jason and I are planning to play the branched quests that's in the core rulebook
Oh,
that's in
cool. Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's in the Rotten Ruin book. So I think it'd be cool to see how like they match up against each other, just like out of the box, faction for faction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doing that. So I think that'd be pretty good. Yeah, great. So yeah, if you guys are interested in the Rotmire Creed, good luck binding it, because all the Nurgle players out there pretty much pretty much picked them up.
Are they really
Um,
good in AOS?
they are. They have a really in AOS the Nurgle does disease stuff.
Uh-huh.
Well, if they use their blowpipes, they'll do disease to that unit, and at the
Oh.
end around it does mortal wounds to them. Right? They'll do disease to a unit and any other unit that's within 3 inches of that unit.
Oh, interesting.
So it's
Okay.
like can get units that are even behind, or like if you're screening a unit in front, like they can end up giving diseases to units behind the screen.
Nice. And can you make them battle line?
Yes, they are. I think.
Oh, that seems pretty good. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So they're pretty legit. And so like everybody was asking me like, hey, do you want to sell your thing? And I'm like, not really. So, but you might be able to find them out there a little bit more now. But I think that I think they're fun, and they're obviously great models. So
Yeah.
check them out. Check them out. Well, let's talk about our main segment here. Fighting monsters. Like we said before, we last episode we went through all the monsters in the game and kind of did our evaluation of them. We realized that some of them were like S tier level chimeras. Some of them were F tier models that like really like the Arachnarok spider, right? That just like wasn't really gonna go anywhere or do anything. But there's a whole bunch in between, and we had some feedback of like, okay, great, you went through all the monsters. Now, how do we fight them? So, Dan, I know that you just put out a video about this. What, yesterday?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
So why don't you kick off this discussion a little bit? Like, what's your take on what's the best way to counteract monsters?
Um, so I would say the first thing is to run the types of fighters that go well into them. If you have, there's certain types of warbands that if you're playing, a bunch of like 100-point guys who still get killed in one hit by a monster, right? They have like 10, 12 wounds.
Yeah.
Um, to keep harping on these carrion catchers, like carrion catchers,
Right.
things like
Right.
that.
Right.
If you're playing a bunch of things like that, you're just gonna get blown off the table, even by most of the weaker monsters.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, want to focus on either really cheap fighters, like skeletons are terrible for monsters because they cover the whole board, and the
Yeah.
monster can only kill one at a time, and isn't going to be able to kill three in a round because you're not going to be within 2 inches. And it's like, am I wasting Dragon Maul on a tiny little skeleton? No way. Or you're going to flood the board with, or not flood the board, but just like have a few pieces that can credibly fight the monster one on one. So things that can survive, and there's not a ton of fighters in the game that survive a chimera that hasn't been bracketed, that
Mm-hmm.
Dragon Mauls you and then attacks you. But they do exist. And if you play, things like the big ogres, right?
Yeah.
Or like the Annihilator Prime. A chimera that Dragon Mauls an ogre, not even an ogre tyrant, but like an ogre crusher or an ogre gut lord, and then doesn't kill it, that chimera is dead. Like that player lost the game. So they won't do that, right? Because they're not
Right.
just going to purposefully lose. So then it just sort of really closes down their options. So I think you want warbands that have and unfortunately, sort of going back to the way you had to build in 1.0, but I think you want warbands that have a few really scary threats and then a lot of cheap fighters, um, so that you can keep your activations up, force the monster to activate in not great places, and then just put a ton of damage on it the second it makes itself vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, like if we were using 1.0, spiders would be amazing against monsters, right?
Oh yeah,
And
spiders are by far the most powerful thing that's ever been in the game.
right, even little giant rats are like amazing against the monsters because, like you were saying, they only activate once. Are they gonna disengage, or are they gonna attack those little giant rats? You know what I mean? And if you have three of them, that takes up their entire round's activations if they try to kill them.
Yep.
So, I mean, the downside is that you're losing those models, right? But the upside is back in 1.0, they were a lot cheaper, so you could have a lot more. They're a little bit more expensive now, but still though, like Jason, I still think that like a 55-point ghoul that you have, just engaging with the monster, is it worth is it worth your ghoul versus for an activation? Like, is that worth it? What do you think?
I agree with Dan that there are a couple ways to fight monsters. One is the activation war, and activation war, and also controlling movement. There's some other, zone defense, I think is what you called it in your video.
Yeah.
I think zone defense is a technique that should be used outside of monsters as well. I use it all the time in my games, in little corners and crevices and things, just to block and things. But I think that if you have a fielded army that has a low activation count, you're going to suffer with monsters. Because the player, unless you play really good in that zone defense, if I had a monster and I was going up against someone that had a really low model count, I would do everything I could just to get you to spend all of your activations before I even engaged my monster, because then I'd have complete freedom of doing stuff with him with the 3 activations that he gets.
Right.
Absolutely. The biggest no-no against a monster is getting an important target out in the open that is already activated. And then the monster can just take one move to get to it, and then it just has 2 attacks with no reprisal. That's just completely devastating.
Yeah.
So that's the absolute worst thing you can do. So you want to build warbands that don't have to put your important targets into a position to let that happen.
Yeah. So to Justin, to your question, I think using a 55-point model to run into a monster to consume a monster's activation is a little situational, but it is an early strategy or an early tactic that I would probably have at the surface of my tactic deck to consider if I was going up against the monster.
Yeah, I just don't know if that. Like I said, I just don't know if that 55-point model, depending on how many models you have, is worth the trade for 1 activation.
Well, it's not early in the game at
Yeah.
all, because
Right.
you will eat up 1 activation for that monster, and you will lose an activation every battle round from that point forward.
Right.
Right.
So that's not an efficient trade at all. That's why I say I think it's situational. Like, are you doing something that's going to get a victory point for that battle round by throwing that 55 points at it? Or are you later in the game where you are okay sacrifice? So it's got to be situational,
Yeah.
not just a tactic. Or, all right, I'm just going to throw it at it so that he can't come get my guy.
And one thing that I think, when I think of zone defense against a monster, I think about putting a model not up against the monster, but to the place where the monster would like to go.
Yep.
Because then the monster can't go there now, and so now it has to waste 2 activations instead of 1, right?
Mhm.
Getting rid of your fighter, then, or like moving to your fighter, getting rid of your fighter, and now it's still not even where it wants to go, really, right? Because your
Right.
fighter was in the way blocking it. So now so you can, if you're kind of clever, and it's tough to give this advice because it's like, be good at the game, which is
Right.
never fair, right, to tell
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
But you do have to kind of try to think cleverly about putting your little cheap 55 pointers into a spot where they're actually wasting 3 activations for the monster, because they're you know in the way, and then they get killed, and then the monster's still not where it wants to be, and then they're basically in the way twice, um, which is hard to do. I mean, I'm not telling people it's easy,
Yeah.
but if you give yourself models that can do it, you can give yourself the tools, I guess is what I'm saying, right? It's not easy to do. You can't, if you're facing a monster and you don't think about your play, you are just going to get kind of rolled over. But if you are thinking about your play, there are definitely ways to outmaneuver them that way.
So it's interesting you think of tools, because as I was thinking about this topic, the thing that came to my mind was nets, and more nets.
Oh,
right?
interesting. Okay.
Because I think if you've got nets, you've got you've got some play here with it, right? And you may end up sacrificing your little net fighter because all of a sudden they can get dragged and mauled. But for one round, you've taken that monster out of the game. If you
As
can
long
get
as they
that
don't
done.
have a Dragon Maul.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that like you can throw the net on him. They can still Dragon Maul your little netter, and he's dead, maybe. You know, but yeah, you're right. Like if he drags the mauls, and then you're still there, and then he can activate again and attack.
I guess I guess that's the
you know.
point
Yeah.
is that the net. I think the net becomes very situational against the monster because you have to get to the monster to throw the net before the monster has moved into a position that gives them tactical
Right.
relevance.
Yeah, you have to win priority or else your net is useless.
Right.
So nets are only good half the time. Uh, but then in later rounds, if the monster's already gotten to where it wants to go, then nets are never going to be useful again for the rest of
Right.
that game. So personally, I would worry. Like I wouldn't say, how about this? I've said in other places, and I still think it's true, having one net in every deployment zone is really, really good in Warcry right now. I wouldn't just put one net in every deployment zone and say, "Oh, I'm going to be okay against a monster."
Right.
I don't think you would be okay. It's definitely a nice thing to have, but the situation where you net a monster, it dragon mauls something other than the netter that's a huge disaster, right? Um,
That's true. You've just kind of wasted that, right?
right.
So,
Yeah, and
um,
Mike, and I only played one tournament with a monster, and it's the only time I've really played a monster. But I would say in almost all of the games I played, I moved the monster kind of once, and then he just stayed in that area the whole time.
You
Because I
self-netted. Yeah.
yeah, he self-netted because I put him in a place to where his 6-inch
right.
had influence over multiple scoring locations in that mission. And
And
so
Yeah.
that
come net
terror
me all you
guy's
want because
base,
I'm where I
yeah.
want to be.
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, on ley lines, weren't you able to put your base somewhere where you could basically control two different objectives?
Yep, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just dirty. I mean, I mean that's just an incredible capability. So that's where, you know, kind of the next thing is, so one, if you go first and you have little cheap fighters, you can go run there to where the monster would want to be. But I think the next thing is you need to have fighters that can put the hurt on these monsters. Um, you
Agreed.
know,
Don't
things
be
like,
afraid to try to bracket it.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, things
Yeah,
that
because
can,
if you can reduce the movement and it's in a bad spot, like
Well, movement
that.
and damage.
Yeah.
In several of the games I played, um, the players said, "Well, I just want to kill the monster. I don't care about winning now. I just want to kill your monster." And I think they realized after they, spent a significant amount knocking it down in bracket, like it really did nothing when it got down to its bottom two brackets. It could move like 3 inches, and it was hitting on like ones and fours.
yeah.
You're like it's a skeleton at that point,
Yeah,
right?
at that point, it's just getting in the way.
Yeah. So,
And I
yeah.
tell people never to build around quads, and that's still true. But I also think having a good rampager in your list is just
Hmm.
really nice to have in general because, yeah, you can never rely on it, but 37% chance, I mean, that most games you're going to have at least a round where you rampage. And if you have a really good rampager, um, the round where you have it, if you've kept your rampager alive, but outside of Dragon Ball range, then
Hmm.
that monster is just living in utter fear of Rampage, out of a
Hmm.
good Rampage fighter, out of something that has decent move and really scary damage output. And yeah, it probably costs, three-quarters of what a monster costs, but um, you know, it solves your problem for you.
Yeah, and look, there are fighters out there that have pretty good damage abilities as well. I mean, let's talk about the Wither Lord, right? Like The toughness on a lot of the monsters is about 4. I think very few of them actually have toughness 5. Um, Most of them are toughness 4, and so a Witherlord 20, on depending on the dice, can do like some significant damage just from the ability. And 10 points will bracket a monster down to, instead of 4s and 8s, it's hitting on 3s and 6s, right, for damage.
Yeah, I like a Witherlord on offense. I worry about taking a Witherlord because of
The defense, it's only 20 wounds.
yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very true.
Um,
You know.
but I was thinking about actually one of your favorites, like the Paladin with the Star Soul Mace
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
fairly
Oh,
cheap
dude, that
guy.
guy is so beefy.
Yeah, because
So
he's got
beefy.
he's got toughness 6. I think chimeras kill them pretty effectively, but any non-chimera monster, only paying 155 points for a a fighter who could credibly actually solo like win a fight against a monster is pretty incredible.
I think he's strength 5 too, so he's hitting on like 3s, 4s, and 5s against a chimera.
Yeah, I mean if you can actually get him to fight against a Chimera, you'll win. I just don't think the Chimera player will let you without, Dragon Maul and smushing him. Um, because he's only got those 20 wounds. I
Yeah.
think, you want things with 10 wounds and then you want things with like 30 plus wounds in your warband if you're worried
Yeah.
about monsters. So things
Yeah.
like um, these Ogre Maw Tribes heroes are so scary to a monster, or what's the like Osiarch Bone Reapers, the Morghasts, right? I
Yeah.
think are pretty scary if you're a monster, things like that.
Yeah. I was just looking up the our boy Paladin was still strike. Yeah. Yeah. He's got 3 attacks, strength 5, 4, 8 damage. So if he can get in there, he can cause a ruckus. And he has the brutal capability, which brutal. If he had a quad, right? Don't plan around this, but if he had a quad, he could make a bonus attack action, and you add half the value of the ability to the damage points for each hit and critical hit.
Yeah, I think the takeaway here is um, a good tactic against the monster is to actually early in the game try to bracket it,
Yeah,
because then that's an effect you can have on it for the rest of the battle rounds. It's not easy to add health back that are a significant amount of health to move it back up a bracket in the game. So that's a lasting effect.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, well, let me ask you this. I mean, you're saying early on the game bracket it. Are you saying early in the game be aggressive with it? Because if you can be aggressive with a monster, you can usually keep it in that spot without it being able to move to where it needs to go. Now, you might be sacrificing fighters for that, but not being able to get to where it needs to go is kind of significant too, don't you think?
It is, but that's guaranteed. That's requiring priority, because a good monster player is going to anticipate what you're trying to do and move his monster early if he gets priority, or he's going to try to win with priority with his wild dice.
Yeah. Or deployment is so dependent there, right? Because sometimes
That's true.
sometimes you don't have, especially now with like move 3 fighters kind of ruling the game. There's just not a lot of warbands that have a ton of fighters that are going to be able to cross, say, a 14-inch deployment gap that is in some missions. So you don't always have the opportunity to just like bum rush the
Yeah,
monster
run up
Mm-hmm.
there.
before it's actually moved. Yeah.
Yeah, there's never going to be a one size fits all, but I think there's some key things to keep in mind about how to help with that monster. If you think you can cross the valley and be aggressive, and you've got a good priority roll at the beginning, meaning your dice and your ability dice,
Yeah.
then consider that. Consider that.
Yeah, the tactics are really varied and really situational based on the terrain and the mission. But I think the biggest thing for me is just you got to give yourself the tools. You just can't be playing, um, the type of warband that just can't eat. if you can't counterpunch onto the monster and you can't bog it down, um, you're just gonna be in trouble. And I think a lot of people who have had really bad experiences with monsters, like one of my favorite war bands is this Slanesh war band that's like mostly Myrmidesh Pain Masters and
Mm-hmm.
things like that have generally gotten really good this edition, actually. Like they win their fights against Chaff, and then actually they hold up elites for long enough to be pretty annoying. So these like 110, 130 point fighters have been pretty cool for me. But against a monster, that Slanesh list would just, you know, fall apart in 2 seconds, right? So you have to be playing fighters that give you a chance against it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we've talked about before how those 100 to like 150 point models sometimes are like point for point not your best fighters, right? They're just kind of we've talked about how Warcry has a middle tier fighter problem where their stats don't tend to match up with their points values that they have. And it sounds like, I mean, like if you're going to build a decent list anyway, that has some hard hitters and then some kind of more cheaper models as support, that works within the vein of fighting against monsters already. So I wouldn't look to those mid tier fighters as like the solution for monsters here. I think they're probably more the problem.
Yeah, which is a shame because I really think mid-tier fighters have been coming back into the game. I mean, we just spent a whole bunch of time talking about how 145 point bloated ones seem like they're really good, and I
Right.
do think they're really good.
Yep.
Just not in this case.
Yep. Yep. Definitely. So hopefully that gives you all a couple of tips on how to take on these monsters that are out there. And then sometimes you're gonna encounter an army that may not have it. So that's the amazing thing about this game is you have such varied lists and such different ideas of what may work and what might not work, and you never know until you bring it to the table. But if you're looking to fight monsters, as we kind of recommended, get something beefy that can take it out. That's designed to inflict massive damage, and or look to really cheaper models to kind of provide that slow down effect and bog some of these monsters down where they may need it. So, but yeah, any parting thoughts tonight, gentlemen?
Well,
Go
if
ahead, Dave.
GW does what they've been doing and releases a whole bunch of rules that invalidate everything we say right after we record, then I'm sure before this airs, they'll have shown all the rules, and the Seraphon pterodactyls will all have an ability where they carry off a monster and throw it off the table. So, you know, it's been really nice having this conversation
Yeah,
before that rule drops, so everyone else can laugh at us.
yeah. I have actually kind of a little addendum, kind of a do over here. The Warcry FAQs came out, and we didn't talk about that. Not that we have to get into it because I think most of them were still holdovers from the last one. I think there's a couple of profiles that might have gotten updated, but the big FAQ that came out, which surprised me that this was the big one, was how to treat fighters that are taller than, bridges and archways and things like that, on how they can move through those areas. And basically, you take a measurement of the monster, and you take a measurement of the bridge to the floor, and as long as the area is higher from the bridge to the floor than half the height of the model, then the model can go under that. So, but it has to
Just
finish its
scurries
move on the
under.
other side.
Yep.
Yep.
Scurries under. Yeah.
Yep. So.
Good they got around to it since the Gur terrain is pretty
Yeah.
extreme for that, right?
Yep.
Pretty
Yep.
dippy.
Yep, but everything else seemed to be pretty normal. I'm kind of surprised they didn't nerf some monster stuff, but I just don't think that they're keeping track of the meta that closely to really know what's happening with
I think they want some more data.
Yeah, I think it's a Tome of Champions only thing.
Yeah.
So let's get out there and play some more games so we can get that data.
That's right. Get that sweet, sweet data. So anyway, thank you everybody for listening tonight. We really appreciate it. If you all could leave us some feedback, that would be great. Find us on YouTube. We'll be putting this up on YouTube. Find us on iTunes. Find us on Spotify, Google Play, wherever you listen to us. If you could give us a rating, that definitely helps us find more listeners just like you. So we appreciate the ones we got. We appreciate you all for hanging out with us. And if you've got ideas for things that you would like to know, just hit us up on social media and let us know, because we'd love to answer your questions out there. So in the meantime, keep the dice rolling and have a great night.
See ya.
See ya.